Hello everybody! 4 weeks old tomorrow. What a ride. I'm really enjoying this. To celebrate the 4 weeks, I've got all the kit. I've got my Batman hat on up here. I've got my Doctor Who t-shirt here, and then down here out of view I've got Thor's hammer. So anyway, if you're new to the channel or you just want a refresher, this next 59 seconds pretty much sums up everything that's happened so far. Send the kids out the room now.
Fuck off, you prick! Wrong! Cunt, 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 cunt. Fuck off, you prick! Cunt, 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 cunt. Fuck off, you prick!
Who's wanking bungle cunts?
And their subscribers swallow it like a sugar-coated shit sandwich.
Fuck off, you prick!
It's absolutely wonderful, isn't it?
You spastic baldy-headed cunt.
So, coming up in this video, we announce the winner of our competition. We then make fun of some individual YouTubers. And then a little treat for those people who've been saying to me in the comment section, I need to be less sarcastic and just do some real science. In the end of this video, I'm going to be responding to a video that Anthony Riley, aka Sleeping Warrior, put out. Now, if you've come from Anthony's channel or you've come from Nathan Oakley's channel to see my response, then I will put a link in the description to where that response starts. Unless you want to watch the rest of this video. Here's a quick advert.
Do you think this bubble is made of water? Do you think water is made of H2O? Do you think this bubble reminds you of somebody's shiny bald head? If so, and you have answered yes to all these questions, why not join like-minded people and follow Conspiracy Cats on Twitter?
Anyway, yeah, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the only people I'm going to follow are people who follow me. I'm really getting used now to some of the names in the comment section, so it'll be great to just discuss proper conspiracy theories as well. You know, real serious stuff outside of the sarcastic, conspiracy cats. And then if you find anything funny on YouTube that I can use in these videos, you know, if you let me know on Twitter, I can credit you and do something with it. That's the idea anyway. You know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Anyway, the winner of our competition. It was really close. First of all, Sean Hawkins, I have to apologise. Waterheads was his vote, and I thought that was not his suggestion. I thought it was very good, and I just forgot to put it in the final lot. So I do apologise, Sean, for that. But the winner, Echo, drum roll, please.
Okay.
Number 5, Moisture Baiters! Well done, Richard. And I do love it because it does sound like masturbators. Fantastic. So, speaking of moisture baiters, let's have a look at the echo chamber of moisture baiters that Peter and Pete create. Now, one of you put me onto a video where Peter and Pete claimed that even photosynthesis isn't real. Now, we all know that's absurd, but just look at the response of these absolute moisture baiters.
Now, obviously, Peter and Pete have made this video saying that photosynthesis isn't real, and obviously they are wrong. They have no science behind it. But just look at this shower of shit. Barnes Rubble, look at his comment. He says, "Hey Pete, that was awesome. How could anyone know what plants do?" So he swallowed it straight away, but it gets even better. I've just got one question. What's a CO2? Now, I don't like to swear on this channel, but fuck me, that is thick. Your first idea was the best. Breath life into people. Keep up the good work. Now, Barnes Rubble, you deserve some kind of award for that.
You see, Barnes, I don't even know where to start with that. I don't think I have to make fun of it. I just think the people watching can see for themselves. But if that wasn't bad enough, just look at the reply he got.
So Furlock Fluffy Pants replies and says, basically, this means that when I said that chlorophyll is just a pigment produced to protect the plants against sunlight, and that photosynthesis was just invented to cover this up, I was effing right. Why would anyone cover that up? Jesus, what? This is unbelievable. And these are the people who will turn around and tell us that we need to do real science. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the echo chamber of moisture baiters of the week. The echo chamber of moisture baiters of the week.
Now, we are edging ever closer to the point where I've got to be serious and do some serious science. But first of all, I want to give out another award, and that is for the most typical response of a moisture baiter for the week. Let's have a look.
So, our man here, Retro Fun, says on my channel, he says, welcome to the channel where we talk shit and do not prove anything. Oh, thanks, Retro Fun.
Now, let's remember that Retrofun believes that water is an element in its own right and not made of hydrogen and oxygen. And I've made the point over and over and over and over and over that when we do electrolysis of water with sodium chloride, we get hydrogen at one electrode, which is hydrogen. We get sodium hydroxide in the liquid, which contains oxygen. But when we accomplish that just by putting in sodium chloride, then the hydrogen and the oxygen must originate in the water. Now, obviously that's been ignored. Retrofun has seen this and ignored it. Let's just watch him continue to ignore.
He then completely bottles out of responding to my point about the electrolysis of water with sodium chloride to say, when you do real science, I will listen.
And isn't that just typical of these crackpots? You know, you give them a real scientific experiment, they pretend not to notice it, and then say, oh, you don't do real science. Absolutely unbelievable. And he carries on.
Yeah, so when I politely tell him that I've screenshotted his reply and I will put it in this next video, he says to me, blah, blah, no proof, do some science, show us how we are deceived. And you can read the rest for yourself, but well done, Retro Fun. You are our typical moisture baiter of the week. The typical and stupid and silly moisture baiter of the week.
Right, and now it's time for the sarcasm to stop. I wouldn't have a YouTube channel, I wouldn't have all you subscribers if it wasn't for two people. Simon Dan and the shout he gave me last week, and Anthony Riley, Sleeping Warrior, who gave me a shout out when I first started on Nathan Oakley's show, so thank you as well, Nathan, that brought me my first 100 subscribers within literally the first 3 days of the channel. Now, Anthony is also... well, every time I've had any kind of communication with him, he's been, you know, a real gentleman and a really good bloke. So the sarcasm stops here. He's presented his video to me. I am going to give my honest opinion on it. And I'm not going to go easy on you, Anthony, okay? But the sarcasm stops. So let's have a look at some of the things you've said.
And of course, I don't accept that gravity even exists. My position is that density and buoyancy explain everything that we see and observe day to day. There is no requirement or further explanation required other than density or buoyancy, and of course none can be contrasted or distinguished from density or buoyancy.
Okay, Anthony, so you are obviously correct that objects that are more dense than the air are going to fall through the air, and objects that are less dense, like a helium balloon, is going to rise through the air. Now, my initial gut reaction to say, well, it's not density alone that's causing that, will be two things straight away. The first one will be that density is just a property of a material, like length or colour, you know, and we wouldn't put sticks of different length together and expect them to jump into length order, or different colours and expect them to jump in, you know, the brightest to darkest. My second response would be to suggest that when we drop things in a vacuum chamber, they fall at the same speed, regardless of what the density is. But I know they're not going to be good enough because I know we've had conversations and you've raised the point that we can't create a perfect vacuum. So when we have objects in a vacuum chamber, there is still a density difference. But all we've done is remove the air resistance. So to answer your question, I'm going to not mention the two things I've just said. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to try and do the following three things. I'm going to try and prove that there is a force that acts on an object. I'm going to do that, teacher's whiteboard, right? I'm going to do that by giving you an experiment that will eliminate air resistance completely. And there we go. Also give an experiment that will show that the density difference is totally unimportant. And if I've misquoted you and misunderstood you, then obviously let me know and I'll do something different. So let's begin. Okay. The first thing I want to do, Anthony, is talk about a force that we can actually see because, again, I know we've spoken in the past about springs, only very, very briefly, but, you know, if a spring is stretched, then you can see the force acting on the spring. There must be something pulling it down. So let's just talk about springs, and I promise we'll get to where we're going with this. Now, I've done this a million times in the classroom with, the kids, and anybody can do it at all. But if we take a spring and we put a weight on a spring, I'm going to call it force because I believe, weight is a force, but whatever. We put a weight on a spring, we will get an extension, and that extension will be proportional to the weight placed on it, to the force placed on it. We have a formula which is F equals KE. Now, F is the force, E is the extension of the spring, and K is what we call the spring constant. It's kind of like a measure of how stiff the spring is. And you can buy a spring of a certain stiffness and you can rearrange that, right? K equals F over E. That gives you the gradient of the graph. And you can actually do, the experiment where you add the weights on and you can show that this relationship is true by calculating the spring constant that you're given. So if we agree that a stretched spring must have a force on it, then let's proceed to point number 2. Now, these spring devices that I've just mentioned, they exist in real life and we use them in school all the time. They're called Newton meters or spring balances. And we basically hang something off on a spring. And using that equation, F equals KE, it's Hooke's law. You can use, you can look into it yourself. You can test it over and over and over and over and over. And you can prove to yourself that F is proportional to E by a constant, which is K. We can prove that. So these spring balances, they do prove that there is a force acting on the spring or acting on the spring balance when you hang an object off it. But let's look at point number 2. When I hang an object off it and it hits equilibrium, it stopped bouncing up and down, it's not moving anymore, then I eliminate air resistance because it's not moving through the air. To have air resistance, you must be moving through the air and pushing against the air. So now we have to, I'm hoping we can accept that when we hang an object on a spring, we prove there's a force on the spring, and we've eliminated air resistance. Now, I know what your thought is. Your thought might be, well, that force on the spring is due to the relative density between the object on the spring and the air around it. We'll come to that next. Now, here's the experiment that we all can do. If you take maybe a bell jar, glass bell jar, or any kind of casing that you can attach even a vacuum cleaner to, and you hang an object from a spring balance and you start to suck the air, you don't need to hit a perfect vacuum. But as you suck the air out, the density difference between the object hanging on the spring and the air around it, because that's reducing, that gets bigger. That density difference gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if objects falling was due to that density difference, then you would see the force on the spring increase. If the object was only moving down because it was more dense than the air and the air got less dense, then the object is obviously going to be pulled down or it's going to move down more. But the thing is, we don't find that. And I have done this in a bell jar, and we can all do it. As you pull the air out, you will find that the force on the spring just doesn't change. The density difference between the object and the air has literally no effect whatsoever on the force on that spring. That differentiates very much for me that the force on the spring has got nothing to do with the density difference between the object and the air. Let me know what you think, though.
And now this is, pay attention. Newtonian gravity acted at a distance, but at least it operated within a framework of absolute space. Einsteinian gravity has no such element of wizardry. The point that I'm making here is that Newtonian gravity acted at a distance, but it at least operated within a framework of absolute space. Einsteinian gravity has no such element of wizardry. So, the magic and wizardry of Newtonian gravity, according to science, has been replaced by Einsteinian bending of space-time. It means that there is no such thing as attractive forces between masses, even if we were to concede that there were some. So all those arguing for an attraction between masses, an extra bit of force between masses, you're arguing the wrong science, guys. You need to be showing us the bending of space-time.
Now, you're absolutely right that Newton's equation, F equals g m1 m2 over r squared, does imply that a mass on one side of the universe would attract a mass on the other side of the universe. But the thing is, Newton never claimed to understand the mechanics. What he did is he created this equation that could be used to predict real world events. It was a model. He never claimed to have the answer. Einstein never claimed to have the answer. He obviously thought very deeply, and his model of the bending of space-time was what he believed in. But there was no evidence, and the article you've pulled from here was from 2015. Now, when you're saying that we need to look for the curvature of space-time, well, since that article was produced, we have found, the LIGO detector has found gravitational waves. And this really takes us on to our next point, that I can't prove to you that gravitational waves are real, just like you can't prove to me that they're not. We either believe what we're told or we don't. And my stance is, if we believe that the gravitational wave, the scientists at the LIGO detector are part of this huge conspiracy who have just made up that these gravitational waves exist, then this conspiracy is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And why? If you were trying to keep this secret, why would you be leaking these scientific discoveries? Why would we constantly be leaking discoveries and breakthroughs in space exploration or etc.? Why would we do that? Why would we be publicizing that and making the web of lies more complex? I can't prove to you that gravitational waves were detected, but somebody please prove to me that there was a conspiracy to pretend they were detected. That's a point we can't come to a middle ground on. Let's look at point number 3.
So now for a practical demonstration where gravity is neither needed or even evidenced. We can explain everything with a little bit of liquid mercury in a container and then a suitably heavy prop, in this case an anvil. So back to the observation, I've put the two values in to reflect the liquid and the metal, and as you can see, you would be able to make a prediction as to what the metal should do in this liquid relative to its relative densities. And it's only when the hand pushes the anvil underneath the liquid do we see any evidence of a force.
So this is where my model predicts what you're showing. Density is mass per unit volume, and something that has a higher mass per unit volume, if we look at the formula for gravity, F equals g m1 m2 over r squared, something with a higher density for the same volume is going to be pulled down with a stronger force. So here the mercury, which is more dense per unit volume, is going to be pulled down more strongly than the anvil. And that is why the anvil floats on top of the mercury. I agree this should happen. Alternatively, your model, where the most dense thing sits on the bottom, would also agree this happens. But I think I've proved with the point about the spring that density doesn't act alone. So I guess I'll just wait for your response on that, respectfully, and we'll see where that goes. All right. I just want to wrap up by saying this has been 4 brilliant weeks, and to be sat here with over 400 subscribers in 4 weeks, thanks to every single one of you, and I'll hammer that Twitter advert again. So it's at Cats Conspiracy, Cats with a Z, and hopefully we can build a proper community. Thank you to Anthony Riley for letting me do this and for approaching me with this video. And I want to make that clear as well. I was approached with this video. This isn't an attack on Anthony at all. Thanks to Simon Dan for what he's done last week, which has, transformed my subscriber base. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
You spastic baldy-headed cunt.